I've been driving trucks across Alaska for the last 10 years. It's a job that wears you down, but it's the isolation that keeps you going. You get used to the quiet, to the long stretches of road where the only thing you hear is the hum of the engine and the howl of the wind. But sometimes, that silence isn't as peaceful as it seems. It was a late evening when I started the haul. I was taking supplies to a small town on the outskirts of the state, a place barely on any map. The snow had begun to fall heavier than usual, and the roads were starting to get slick. There wasn't a soul in sight. You can go for miles without seeing another vehicle, and if you break down out here, good luck. As I made my way through the winding path, something caught my eye in the rearview mirror. At first, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me, the headlights of a car, far off in the distance, bouncing like they were driving erratically. But when I blinked, they were gone. The road was empty again. Just me, the truck, and the endless darkness of the Alaskan night. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I was tired, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The air had a strange chill to it, even for Alaska. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath. A few miles later, I heard the unmistakable sound of a truck engine behind me. The hum grew louder, and I glanced in the mirror. Sure enough, a set of headlights were gaining on me fast. I wasn't sure where this guy had come from, there were no other vehicles on the road when I last checked. But before I could even think about pulling over to let him pass, the lights blinked out. I slowed down, hoping the trucker would just go around, but the road ahead was still clear. I looked back again. Nothing. No sign of the truck. No sound of an engine. I wasn't sure what to make of it. Was I imagining things, or had I just seen something that shouldn't be out here? But the worst part? I wasn't alone anymore. And that was just the beginning. I kept driving, my hands tight on the wheel, eyes darting from the rearview mirror to the endless stretch of white ahead. The road seemed to go on forever, just the dark, snow-covered expanse and the occasional blur of trees on either side. But I couldn't shake the sense that something was following me now, lurking just out of view. I told myself it was nothing, just the stress of the long haul, the isolation starting to get to me. After all, it was Alaska. People came out here to disappear. Maybe that trucker was just another guy going too fast in the snow, or some lost soul on a forgotten road. But then I heard it. A sound so faint, I wasn't sure at first if it was real. A tapping. Light but persistent, like someone drumming their fingers against the back of my cab. I slammed my foot on the brake and whipped my head around, half expecting to see a figure standing on the steps, but the back of the truck was empty. Nothing was there. No sign of anyone. I cursed under my breath, my heart pounding in my chest. I was starting to panic, I could feel it. My skin crawled with every passing second, every mile that stretched further into the night. The tapping stopped as suddenly as it had started, but my nerves didn't calm. I sped up, my truck roaring louder in the silence, but I wasn't moving fast enough. Every time I glanced in the mirror, the headlights were closer. Whoever, or whatever, it was gaining on me. It wasn't just a trucker anymore. It felt more like a shadow, an entity that had made itself known without showing itself fully. I was alone on a road that didn't care if I lived or died. The temperature had dropped even further, and I could see my breath fogging up in the cab. It was so cold, the kind of cold that felt like it was seeping into your bones, making your joints ache, your teeth chatter. But it wasn't the cold that terrified me the most. It was the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching in the snow behind my truck. I froze, straining my ears, but there was nothing there when I looked out the windows. Just more dark, swirling snow. But I could feel it. Something was walking right behind me, just out of sight, as if it was waiting for the right moment to make itself known. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know if someone was out there. Maybe it was another trucker who'd pulled over for some reason. Maybe I wasn't alone out here after all. I pulled over to the side of the road, the truck's brakes screeching in protest. The engine died with an eerie finality, and I sat in the silence, waiting, listening. The snow continued to fall, thick and heavy, muffling any sound beyond my truck. I opened the door slowly, my boots crunching on the snow as I stepped out into the freezing air. I was alone. Or so I thought. I stood there, staring out into the vast emptiness of the Alaskan night. The wind howled, pushing the snow around in swirling gusts, making it difficult to see more than a few feet in front of me. I half expected to see a figure emerging from the mist, but there was nothing. Just the heavy silence, broken only by the distant creak of my truck's frame in the cold. My breath formed thick clouds in the air, but my chest tightened. It was like being in a dream, a bad dream where nothing made sense, but I couldn't wake up. The footsteps I'd heard earlier. Gone. The feeling of something, or someone, watching me. That feeling hadn't gone away. I glanced around nervously, then slammed the truck door shut behind me. As I moved back toward the driver's seat, I heard it again. The tapping. But this time, it wasn't coming from behind me, it was coming from inside the truck. My heart stopped. I froze in place, unable to move. I had just locked the door when I stepped out. No one could have gotten inside. And yet, there it was, clear as day, someone or something, tapping on the windows from the inside. The sound wasn't random, either. It was rhythmic, deliberate. Almost mocking. I hesitated for what felt like an eternity before I finally gathered the courage to open the door again. My hand shook as I grabbed the handle, yanking it open. The truck was still empty. The cab was just as I left it, nothing amiss, no sign of anyone. But then, I noticed something. The seat. It wasn't right. The leather had been disturbed, slightly shifted. Like someone had been sitting there. I stepped back, my pulse pounding in my ears. I had to get out of here. The air was thick with the sensation that something was waiting. I jumped into the truck, my fingers fumbling to start the engine. The truck roared to life, but I didn't feel any better. Something was wrong. I couldn't explain it, but I could feel it deep in my gut. I wasn't just being paranoid. I pulled back onto the road, my eyes flicking to the rearview mirror every few seconds. The snow was falling harder now, making it almost impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. My headlights barely cut through the haze. But then, as I glanced back, there they were. Two headlights, far off in the distance. I wasn't sure if I should be relieved or terrified. Could it be the same truck I'd seen earlier, or was this another phantom, another trucker lost in the blizzard, or worse, something else entirely? The truck behind me began to speed up. I could feel it drawing closer, and that feeling of dread returned with full force. I gripped the wheel tighter, trying to push the fear down. This was Alaska. Anything could happen out here. The weather could do strange things to your mind. I kept telling myself that, even though I knew deep down that this was different. As the truck crept closer, I saw something in the lights, a figure standing in the middle of the road. I slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. I don't know how I didn't hit him. My foot was still pressing the brake when the figure vanished, as if the snow itself swallowed him whole. 1 second he was there, tall, thin, standing still in the middle of the road, and the next, nothing. Just empty space, the headlights shining into the nothingness. I slammed the truck into park, heart racing, hands gripping the wheel so hard I could feel the blood pounding in my fingers. My breath came in short, panicked gasps, but I couldn't take my eyes off the spot where the figure had stood. I tried to calm myself down, trying to make sense of it, but the fear was suffocating. That wasn't just some person. That wasn't even a trucker. I knew that much. I shifted the truck back into drive, my foot pressing cautiously on the gas pedal. The truck moved forward slowly, my eyes scanning the road ahead, my nerves on edge. But every time I looked in the rearview mirror, the figure was still there. I could see the outline, faintly, standing just outside the lights of my truck, as though it was walking behind me. But when I looked in the side mirror, there was nothing. I wasn't imagining this. Something was out there, following me, but I couldn't see it clearly enough to know what it wanted. My knuckles were white, and I kept my foot on the gas as if the faster I went, the safer I would be. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. The feeling of being hunted was unmistakable, and no matter how fast I drove, I knew the nightmare would follow. The road ahead began to curve, and I saw a flash of something in the distance, just a flicker of movement in the snow. My stomach twisted in knots. My gut told me I wasn't alone anymore, that something had crossed over from the world of the living to the world of the dead. Then I saw it. There, on the side of the road, more figures, standing in the shadows, blending with the dark. I barely caught the glimpse of one before my mind screamed at me to look away. I couldn't focus. I couldn't think. All I knew was that something was out there, and I wasn't safe anymore. I sped up again, my breath coming quicker, but the figures didn't disappear. They were multiplying. It was like they were appearing out of nowhere, shadowy shapes, faint figures, all wearing heavy winter coats. They all had that same stillness to them, like they weren't even real. And yet, I could feel their eyes on me, even though they didn't have faces. They were drawing closer, no matter how fast I went. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were all waiting for something. But what? That's when I heard it again, the tapping. This time, louder, faster. It wasn't coming from the outside this time. It was coming from inside the cab. I froze, panic gripping my chest. I didn't want to look. But I had to. I turned slowly, and that's when I saw it. A pale hand, covered in snow, was resting on the passenger seat. I felt my blood run cold as I stared at the hand. It wasn't just any hand. The fingers were long, unnaturally thin, and the skin was pale, almost gray, like it had been frozen solid. The hand rested calmly on the passenger seat, almost as if it belonged there. But there was no way it could. I had just been in the truck alone. There was no way anyone could have gotten in without me noticing. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. My stomach twisted into a tight knot. I wasn't just afraid now. I was paralyzed with terror. Every instinct in my body screamed for me to get out of the truck, but my legs wouldn't move. My hands were glued to the wheel, shaking uncontrollably, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't tear my eyes away from the hand. Then, without warning, the fingers twitched. I jumped back in the seat, my breath catching in my throat. The hand didn't just twitch, it moved, slowly curling inwards, as though it were testing its own strength, preparing to grab something. Me. I slammed the truck into park again, my heart pounding in my chest. I fumbled for the door handle, but the tapping came again. This time, it was louder, more desperate, and it was coming from all directions. It wasn't just coming from the passenger seat. It was all around me. The whole truck seemed to be shaking from the inside, like something was trying to get in. The sound of breathing echoed in my ears. But it wasn't mine. I didn't wait another second. I threw open the door, my legs unsteady as I stepped out onto the snow-covered ground. My boots slipped in the ice, but I didn't care. I had to get away from that truck. I had to get away from whatever was inside. I ran blindly into the storm, the wind howling louder than ever, the snow stinging my face. The road stretched out endlessly before me, and I had no idea how far I was from civilization. I didn't care. I just needed to escape. I turned back for a second, expecting to see the truck, but there was nothing. No lights, no movement. It was as if the truck had disappeared. I couldn't explain it. Maybe I was losing my mind. Maybe it was the isolation, the stress of being out here for too long. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just my mind playing tricks on me. I heard it again, footsteps, crunching in the snow behind me. I froze in place, my body stiff with fear. Slowly, I turned, and there it was. The figure I had seen earlier was standing just a few feet away. But this time, it wasn't a man. Not anymore. It had no face, just a dark, empty void where its eyes should have been. It was towering over me, and the air around it felt colder than anything I had ever experienced. I wanted to scream, but the words wouldn't come. My lungs were frozen, my throat dry. The figure took a slow step forward, and I could hear the crunch of the snow under its weight, like it was pressing down on me with every step. The snow around me began to swirl, faster and faster, and I couldn't see the figure anymore. All I could hear was the sound of the wind, the pounding of my own heart, and the voice in my head telling me to run. So I ran. But this time, I didn't get far. I don't know how long I ran. Time felt like it had stopped. The storm had completely swallowed me, the snow blurring everything around me. I couldn't see a thing, just a whirl of white, the howling wind drowning out any sounds. My heart thudded painfully in my chest, each breath coming in ragged gasps, but still, I kept running. It was like the only thing I could do, the only thing that could keep me alive. But the worst part? I could still hear those footsteps. They were behind me, just a few feet back, moving at the same pace I was, but it was like I couldn't shake them. No matter how fast I moved, they were always there, just out of sight, following me in the storm. I stumbled over a patch of ice and fell hard to the ground, the wind knocked out of me. My hands scraped against the frozen earth, and I lay there for a moment, gasping, the cold creeping into my bones. But as soon as I hit the ground, the footsteps stopped. For a brief moment, the world was quiet again, except for the wind. It almost felt like I was in a different world, one where nothing could reach me, where I could just breathe and relax. But I knew that wasn't the case. I didn't need to look behind me to know that whatever had been following me was still there. I could feel it. The air around me had changed, it felt denser, like the atmosphere was pressing down on me, suffocating me. I got up slowly, brushing the snow off my jacket, trying to ignore the numbness creeping into my limbs. I took one more step forward, but my foot didn't meet solid ground. Instead, it sank deep into something soft, like I was walking into a pit. I looked down and realized with a sickening jolt that I had stepped into deep snow, no, not just snow. It was snow covering something else. Something I couldn't see, but I could feel it pulling at my foot. I tried to pull away, but the snow had a grip on me, tight and unrelenting. It wasn't just snow, it was something else. Something colder. I yanked harder, but my foot wouldn't move. And that's when I heard it, the unmistakable sound of something moving beneath me. The ground beneath me shifted, and I felt the earth crack open. Suddenly, something pulled me. Hard. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the snow. It was as if invisible hands had wrapped around my ankles, dragging me deeper into the snow, pulling me toward the darkness below. I screamed, clawing at the snow with my hands, but I couldn't fight it. My body was being pulled under the earth, swallowed by the cold, suffocating darkness. I could feel the pressure building, the weight of whatever was beneath me tightening, pressing against my chest. My lungs burned with each breath, but the cold, that cold, was unbearable. It was unlike anything I had ever felt. It was more than just temperature, it was like the cold was reaching inside me, wrapping around my heart, freezing me from the inside out. I tried to scream again, but the snow had filled my mouth. The last thing I could feel was the freezing, crushing pressure, and then, nothing. I don't know how long I was trapped in the snow. It felt like hours, days, even. My mind was hazy, like I was floating between sleep and consciousness, but I knew I couldn't give in. The cold, the pressure, it was all becoming too much. But something deep inside me kept fighting, kept telling me to keep moving, to not let whatever it was win. And then, suddenly, everything stopped. I don't know how or why, but I found myself gasping for air, the crushing weight lifting from my chest, and I felt solid ground beneath me again. I wasn't sure if I was alive or if I had passed into something else, but I wasn't in the snow anymore. My lungs were burning, but I could breathe, and the bitter cold wasn't suffocating me anymore. I blinked my eyes open, disoriented, trying to understand where I was. The storm had passed. The snow was still there, but the wind had died down. The world around me was dark, but it wasn't the oppressive blackness I had felt before. It was a quiet, empty darkness that stretched out in every direction. No figures. No footsteps. Just silence. I sat up slowly, feeling the weight of exhaustion in my limbs. I was still in my trucker's gear, my boots covered in snow, but there was no sign of where I had fallen, no trail left in the snow. It was like the earth had swallowed me whole and then spat me back out. I was lying in the middle of the road, alone. I didn't waste any time. I scrambled to my feet and ran back to my truck, not even looking behind me. I didn't need to. I had learned the hard way that if I looked back, I wouldn't like what I saw. I didn't even care if the truck was still working, I just needed to get away. The engine roared to life with a loud growl, and I didn't hesitate for a second. I floored the gas pedal, sending the truck speeding down the road, the tires sliding slightly on the icy surface, but I didn't care. The road was empty again, the only sound the roar of the engine and the snow kicking up behind me. As I drove, the fear slowly began to fade. Maybe it was the adrenaline. Maybe it was just the overwhelming need to survive. But I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened, what I had seen. I couldn't stop thinking about those figures, the footsteps, the hand in the cab, and that thing out in the snow. Was it a warning? Was it trying to take me? I didn't know, and I wasn't sure I ever would. But there was one thing I was sure of, I had escaped. I had made it out of that nightmare. And I had no intention of ever coming back. I wish I could tell you that I never went back to Alaska after that night. That I packed up and left, never looking at the road again. But you can't just walk away from something like that. It stays with you. The fear, the feeling of something watching you, following you, no matter where you go. I left the state for a while, took a few weeks off to let the terror fade, or so I thought. I kept telling myself it was just a bad experience, that I had been lost in the storm, overwhelmed by the isolation. But no matter how far I drove, I could still hear the tapping, feel the cold in my bones, the air pressing in on me. Eventually, I found myself back on the Alaskan roads, driving under a heavy, cloud-covered sky, the snow falling in sheets. The truck had become a prison, and the road had become an endless stretch of dark nothingness. I wasn't sure if I was chasing something, or if it was chasing me. But this time, I wasn't alone. The headlights behind me appeared again, far off in the distance. I didn't panic, not at first. I kept driving, keeping my speed steady. But the truck began to close in on me, just like before. I could feel it. I could hear it. But this time, when I glanced in the rearview mirror, I saw something that made my stomach drop. The figure wasn't in the truck. It was walking beside it. Its dark shape loomed just outside the range of my headlights, moving at the same speed, staying in the snow as if it wasn't bound by the road. I tried to convince myself it was just my mind playing tricks, but it wasn't. I could see it. I could see the figure, those long, thin limbs moving like they were gliding through the storm. And this time, I could hear its footsteps, crunching in the snow, just beside me. I slammed my foot on the gas pedal, my hands gripping the wheel like a vice. I drove faster than I should have, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't care about anything but escaping. But the figure kept pace. It was there, just out of sight, always there. And no matter how fast I went, no matter how hard I tried to outrun it, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was going to catch me. Then, for the first time since that night, I heard something different. A voice. A whisper, soft and low, just barely audible above the wind. You're not getting away. I snapped my head around, but the truck was still empty. No one was in the cab with me. Nothing had changed. But the voice didn't stop. It echoed inside my head now, louder, filling the cab, the space around me. You can't escape. The road stretched out in front of me, an endless, desolate trail, but I knew something had changed. I wasn't just on a road anymore. I was in its world now. The truck began to shake. The wheels started to slip. The engine sputtered. I couldn't understand what was happening, but it wasn't the weather. It wasn't the truck. The storm wasn't just outside anymore. It was inside. I could feel the presence now, all around me, the weight of it pressing down, suffocating me. I could hear the whispers more clearly, and I realized, with a sinking feeling in my stomach, that they weren't just warnings anymore. They were a promise. I wasn't going to make it out this time.